Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another installment of Muslim Skeptic Live. I'm here with my brother Farid. MashaAllah, he is very active online and on YouTube and has been doing amazing work writing refutations, doing video refutations of Murtaddeen, quote unquote, ex-Muslims, as well as modernists and Shia and many other types of groups and people. And so we have him here with us today. Thank you for joining us, Brother Farid.
Allah barak fik, akhi. It's my pleasure to be here. Assalamu alaikum wa
rahmatullah. So I know that a lot of our viewers were very excited that you're going to be the guest. MashaAllah.
Akhi, I'm excited, akhi. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be doing this, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So I know that you have a bachelor's degree in mass communication. Just to give the viewers a little background about you, you have studied Aqidah and Hadith sciences under various numerous ulama. And you've also edited and authored several works. One of the ones that caught my attention, mashallah, was a book on the authentic narrations on Hussein.
Alhamdulillah. It's been something that has been lingering on my mind for a while, and I just looked through the works, the contemporary works, and I just noticed that there was nothing on that. So alhamdulillah, I just had to do it.
MashaAllah, that's great. So tell us a little bit more about your background. Like, how did you become interested in Islam, studying Islam more deeply? Tell us more about that, your journey, basically.
Oh man, I got quite a story for you, and I don't really share this one much. But basically, I had a friend. This was about 12 years ago. Wow, and it's going to be. I hope I don't go overboard with time on this one. I mean, it's quite a story. I'll try to zip through it a bit fast. But basically, was introduced to this really, really nice, really sweet brother, and he was the kindest person I met in my life. First day meeting him in the masjid, and he was just trying to, asking me all these questions. How do you like it here? Where are you guys from? And I was in the UAE at the time, and subhanallah, the guy disappears. For a year or something. He was a very, very religious brother. He comes back with dreadlocks, with a strange outfit, a Hawaiian shirt, and he just looks so different. And one of those berets, and I was like, well, what happened to this guy? And all the religious brothers around him, the conservative brothers, they just avoided him from then on there, and except for me. And I was like, I want to figure out what happened to this guy. Long story short, he was just someone who, I don't know how to put this. He was shot down. He was shot down too many times, and he said, I have no one to look up to. Something strange like that. And it's a complicated thing, definitely, but. And there are some things that I would rather not go into about that. But basically, the guy decided to change the way he practiced his life, lived his life. Well, at the same time, I would sit with him and I would say, "Akhi, what are your views on music and ma'azif?" And he would switch from this. He had this like Rasta look at the time, right? And he would switch 180 degrees, and he'd be like, قال ابن حزم في المحلى, and he would go like really deep into the aqwal of the ulama, into the permissibility of music, and I was shocked that this person who looks like this spoke like a strong student of knowledge. And that was the first thing that really got to me. And I used to hang around with him a lot, and I would ask him about various things, and he'd always have really comprehensive answers to everything. Very, very smart brother. And one day I said a joke, and he analyzed the joke. He was like, "Oh, you see why it's funny? It's because first you got the delivery right, you got this right, you got that right. And he was like analyzing a joke. And I said, how did you learn about this? And he said, well, I read a book about how to tell a joke. The guy became a lead singer later on. I asked him, how did you become so good at this? And how did you get into this? He was like, oh, I read a book about singing. So that clicked, the importance of reading. And before that, I fought really low of knowledge and reading, Akhi, to be honest. I looked down upon people who read. Why would you read? I mean, there are videos on whatever you're thinking about. This is, by the way, I was like 19, 20 at the time, subhanAllah. How I've changed thanks to that brother and the way he lived his life and the way he took knowledge. And wallahi, that had such a big effect on me. And since then, I've just been reading.
What do you think happened to that brother? Like, why do you think he, with having the knowledge that he had?
He had some funky views. He had some extreme views. I later on found out. Much later on found out. Okay. I even asked the brother that was with him at that day at the masjid and asked him, hey, that guy was really nice to me that day. What was up with that? And he was like, well, to be honest, he was trying to recruit you. I was like, recruit me? What? Yeah, so the guy had an extreme side, and that didn't work out for him. Again, as I said, he got shot down for his views and for his extremism and whatnot. And then he just had the 180 degree flip, and that was it.
Yeah, subhanAllah. So guidance is in the hands of Allah, so you can never know. Only Allah knows what's going to be our ends. So
no doubt. I'm sure you never had. I don't know. Did you go through something like that? I mean, that quest for not a quest for knowledge. I'm sure. I'm aware that you grew up in a secular family and then you became religious as time passed on. But did you ever have that apathy towards reading and then? Yeah.
No, I always liked reading. I was kind of a bookworm growing up, right. And the nerd in school. So.
Mashallah. I wish I had that, Akhi. I wish I had that.
Yeah, that means you have to make more of an effort. So, inshallah, Allah will reward you for that. So great, that's great. So now, I think when I think of Farid, I think of online refutation, and mashallah, you've produced a lot of great videos refuting different individuals over the years. What do you think is the importance of online refutation? What do you think, not just for you, but just in general, what is the importance of it?
Wallahi, the drive is that person that DMs me saying, Akhi, I have doubts about Islam. That's the drive behind it. So no doubt it's got to be really important. At the same time, I understand a lot of people don't see the importance within it, because I would also get people saying, why are you wasting your time? These shubuhat are obviously false. You shouldn't really focus on these things. You shouldn't give attention. I really hate that. I really hate this. Yeah. And Akhi, I'd be like, I'm this guy with a small channel. I got 3,000 subs. I'd be targeting a guy with 150,000, 170,000 subs. So they'd be like, Akhi, you're giving him too much attention.
Yeah, exactly. You're giving too much attention. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one thing.
So another thing that people say is that you shouldn't focus. I mean, I get this a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. We shouldn't really focus on the negative. We should build people up. We should, try to build people's iman. Don't focus on being negative, refuting, breaking down. What would you respond to when people say that?
Well, Akhi, honestly, I think that building things up is the easy way to go. It's very important. There's no doubt about it. Teaching people their aqidah, teaching people why they believe in Islam or why they should be believing in Islam. That's definitely extremely important. But at the same time, if we ignore all the shubuhat, if we ignore all the negatives, then those are going to cause people a lot of doubts, unfortunately. And unfortunately, especially in the West, I mean, the barrier of language in itself is a problem, a major problem for people who face these doubts and face these alternative ideas. So yeah, without a doubt, and it is a very big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's really hard. It's really hard, and there's just so much to refute, and it never finishes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things coming from enemies of Islam and people who are attacking Islam, and then there's also stuff internally, unfortunately, where there are some deviated views that are just creeping into Muslim mindset, and so it's like it's adding more work. We're dealing with all these enemies of Islam, and then now you have Muslims who are feeding into the narratives of those enemies against Islam, but they think they're doing something good for the ummah, or they think that they're helping Muslims.
And it hurts me to see how much hate that you get for this. It's something I've noticed, and alhamdulillah, I often see people backing you up. People saying, what is he saying that's wrong? What's Daniel saying that's incorrect? And people would they would have an issue with your tone, and then I would notice them saying, "Tayyib, what? Forget the tone. What is he saying something that's incorrect?" And they'd be like, "Not necessarily, but his tone is a problem."
Yeah.
So that's something. Yeah, that's something that hurt me, akhi. Because to be honest, there aren't too many. I mean, I always look at British Islam to be, alhamdulillah, better than anything else in the West. And I look at American Islam, I'm like, a'udhu billah. I mean, that's just a mess. And you're one of the few people who do. I mean, who says it like it is. Allah yajzik al-khair, man, and may Allah reward you and give you patience.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, I'm sure you get this point as well. People saying that your tone is not ideal. Like people saying that, you should be more serious because sometimes you use like a mocking tone, or like I crack up whenever I see the thumbnails of your videos.
Shout out to Ibn Maradun, who's been doing that wonderful work with the thumbnails. He kills me every time.
Yeah, mashallah. So what do we say, like, Brother Farid, this is not serious. You're not taking the issue seriously. You need to be, tone down the mockery.
I didn't get it as badly as you've been getting it, to be honest. Most people ignore these aspects. I mean, because here's the thing. Usually, I don't do this. Usually, I'm very respectful in my refutations. Even with my Abu Layth videos. If you watch my Abu Layth videos, I barely go overboard. The worst things I've called him were metrosexual, Tekken character, stuff like that. I mean, I never go overboard with Abu Layth. Even though I think he's the worst. I think he's like one of the biggest zanadiq of all time.
All time?
Abu Layth. I hope you're watching this.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm respectful. But this guy, apostate prophet, I can't respect him.
Yeah, so apostate prophet is this guy. So why do you focus on him? Like, what's significant about his work channels, and do you see like his ideas like actually? Because some of his videos, I feel like any Muslim with a basic education would understand that this is nonsense. So I don't think he's really aiming it towards other Muslims. I think he's just preaching to atheists who already think that Islam is backwards and irrational.
Me and Emin, may Allah bless him, we pass his videos to one another and we rate them on the shubuhat scale. Is this a 10 out of 10 shubha that could actually lead someone out of Islam if he watches this video? Of course, if it's a 10, we got to do the video. If it's a 9, we got to do the video. If it's an 8, we got to do the video. If it's around 5, we pitch it to some other guys. If it's a 4, we're like, I don't think anyone's leaving Islam for this. I don't think anyone's going to be affected by this. So we try to decide. We try to weigh it out every single video. And in the beginning, Apostle Prophet has like 155 videos on his channel. We narrowed it down to like 90, and then narrowed it down to. We narrowed it down to 90 because so much of it was repetitive, but then we narrowed it down to around 50 because a lot of it's really silly or really weak, or it's not going to be an issue for anyone. So yeah, the goal, the niyyah, is to just focus on the top 50 videos on this channel. Alhamdulillah.
So what percentage have you gone through so far?
We've done around 42, 43 or something like that. We just got about 7 to go.
Oh, wow.
2 of them are, alhamdulillah, we're almost done, man. Like, I can't believe it. I mean, it looked like an impossible task a month and a half ago, but we're almost done.
Wow, that's amazing, mashallah. That's quite an achievement. I know that these videos are being watched, mashallah, and being shared, so your efforts are having an impact. And it seems like the guy himself, the quote-unquote, his name is Ridwan, right?
Yeah.
So this Murtad, seems like he's even noticing your efforts and maybe
definitely.
getting annoyed.
He's in my DMs, Afi. He's in my DMs calling me a terrible person. Yeah.
Oh, so he's saying what? Like, quit it? Stop?
La. He's calling me a terrible person, and he's like, oh man. You know, I mean, if I didn't have any morals, if I didn't have any limits, I'd be publishing the stuff that he's been saying. But la, you know, I do respect everyone's privacy. These are DMs. The golden rule is not to share DMs and whatnot. But yeah, generally, it's fun. I mean, it is fun to the back and forth between me and him on DMs. I do enjoy that bit. We don't go all out. We don't cuss each other out or anything like that. But it is a bit entertaining to see him react in a way.
Yeah, I think it's significant that, going back to the question of tone and mockery, that he is very mocking in his videos.
Extremely.
And a lot of these figures are very mocking that you're refuting. Like, they are, maybe some of them even go to the level of using foul language, but they're just mocking Muslims, they're mocking the deen. Or if it's like a modernist, like you mentioned Abu Layth, like they'll be mocking traditional views. And so the question is, well, if you don't match the kind of level of discourse in your tone, then it seems like you're cowering, or like you feel like it's very belittling, so you can't let people belittle you, right?
Right. I agree. And again, I mean, I think anyone, I do, Akhi. I actually cut out the parts where he's extremely offensive to Muslims, where he attacks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he attacks Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, Akhi, I've been dealing with Shias for a long time, about 10 years, and I've heard them say everything. But, you know, I've heard so much of it that I am desensitized, unfortunately. And I could hear the worst thing, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, so my response to this is, and give a completely academic answer. But it's the first time that someone's been able to offend me. So sometimes I just can't, sometimes I just gotta go. You know, sometimes I just gotta go hard.
You mean Ridwan is the first one to, after a while?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I gotta give him that, right? I gotta give him that. He doesn't even do it in a smart way. He's just vile in the things that he says. And as someone, and you know, the thing is, it's strange how they supposedly write the rules of this thing, that they can offend a religion, but we can't offend them, and we cannot attack them, and we cannot insult them if they attack Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it is legitimate if you have enemies of Islam who are insulting and they're attacking. that Muslims can respond in kind. This is something that the scholars have commented on, because there's the ayah that Allah says, don't insult their gods unless they insult Allah, or attack Allah. But the scholars mentioned that if they're the ones initiating, then it can possibly be sinful for the Muslim not to respond in kind, to not respond with the same kind of discourse. So there's kind of, maybe some people have a misconception that they think that never is it allowed to insult someone or to mock them, but that's not the case. The ulama were clear on the limits, and this is one of those areas where it's actually expected that if someone is insulting Allah, insulting Deen, the Prophet ﷺ, then one is justified in actually, and in certain circumstances, obligated, if one is able to do it in a, I mean, there's all kinds of shurut and conditions on all of this, but if one is able to competently respond and do it in a, in the right way, where it actually will affect people's hearts, and kind of, because not every interaction with the other side is about softening their hearts and bringing them towards Islam. Right? Sometimes it's about, okay, we have to show that we're not weak. Like Muslims, we're not going to just roll over. We're not going to let you insult Allah to our face and then we just like want to turn the other cheek or give you a hug, right? So there's all kinds of wisdoms about how to address like those kinds of attacks, and it's not as simplistic as, oh, we just want to be friends with everyone and show everyone that we're so loving and merciful.
Right. Akhi, on that note of not necessarily doing it for their benefit, Akhi, I've told him straight out. I was like, hey man, I'm not doing this for your guidance. I couldn't care less about your guidance. And that's how I truly feel about it. And Akhi, wallah, it surprises me when I see Muslims wanting his guidance. Wallah, it surprises me.
What do you mean by that?
Akhi, because it's well, when I see that, it's really pure-hearted. It's really pure-hearted to always want the best and to always want guidance and goodness for every single person. And this, of course, isn't necessary. This isn't necessary for one to feel like this. Even we even have examples of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wishing the worst for some of the kuffar, and we even have examples in the Quran of prophets acting in that way. So that's of course another option, which many people don't, which many Muslims aren't, simply seem to not be aware of. But when I see,
well, do you mean in the dunya, like wanting the worst in terms of their efforts and? But ultimately, like, we do want guidance for all.
Everyone?
Yeah, if even the worst enemies of Islam, like that was the case, didn't the Prophet ﷺ make dua for one of the two Umars to become Muslim?
Of course, there are some, however, there are some of the mushrikeen that Rasulullah ﷺ made da'wah against.
Yeah, but that was for their dunya, not their akhirah, right?
I don't know. I need to look into it, but I do recall examples. of. Here another one of the examples, famous examples, is the son of Adam saying to the other son of Adam, "I hope that you take your sins and my sins, both." If you recall that one. So there does seem to be examples of major figures, including prophets, wishing the worst, not only in dunya, but in akhirah as well.
I have to look into that. I'm not familiar with that example.
Jawaz al-la'n, the fact that you have major ulama permitting la'n itself.
But that's different from, like, if there was an option, like if it was a possibility that the person could make tawbah and become Muslim, and then, yeah, that would be the ideal that we would desire. But if in their particular situation, yeah, of course, cursing them because of what they're doing against Muslims, then yeah, of course. But then their akhirah, if it's also possible, that the ideal situation.
I would suggest picking up Ibn Jawzi's Risala on La'n Yazid. He goes into some of that stuff, and to be honest, that book changed my perspective on stuff that have to do with La'n and whatnot. It's quite an interesting read. It's quite short as well.
Sure. Okay. I'll check that out. It's definitely an interesting issue. So another question that I want to ask you about online refutation, if you had $1 million budget, okay, because a lot of our efforts, we're limited in the amount of money that we can spend. But if you were unlimited in your budget and you're unlimited in your time, what issue would you focus on for addressing, and how would you address it?
Have you asked this to others before on this show?
No.
Okay. So personally, I've seen organizations do work, organizations that have had major budgets, and I do not see baraka in their work. I've seen individuals do more than organizations with budgets. So personally, I don't think that, I think that any work that can be done or that should be done can be done without budgets. That's just how I feel. Due to what I've seen money being squandered off in the worst ways when budgets existed, and I do, and something I've always tried to stay away from. Money when it comes to da'wah and whatnot.
Okay. Okay, that's.
How about yourself?
Well, for me, I would address the things I usually address: modernism, and so I do produce videos and articles on that. But if I could pump money into that effort, I would, spend it on a research team, a marketing team, graphics team, all of these different. Because, you have that kind of effort from governments and from NGOs and these multi-million or billion-dollar funds that are trying to reform Islam, actually, and are trying to confuse Muslims. And
we might give me examples. Of that, of multi-million-dollar efforts against Islam, and what came out of that? What were the fruits of that?
You have to look at the whole history of colonialism and the effort that was put by the colonizer in wanting to reform Islam and secularize the Muslim mind. And so they put money in a lot of different things. They put money, for example, in getting certain scholars and basically buying them out and putting them on a payroll. That is something that is documented in history. So you have this scholar in your pocket, and you're making sure that he teaches only those things that are going to be more conducive towards Muslims accepting the colonizer. And you co-opt institutions, like institutions of learning. You co-opt these scholars. You spend money on, newspapers, on TV stations. So you have colonizers who created entire TV stations in the Muslim world, and those stations are preaching Islam, like they're bringing on religious content, but it's your version of Islam. It's the pacifist version of Islam that all religions are acceptable, and Islam is only about mercy. There's no such thing as Sharia or hudud or jihad or all of these concepts that are contrary to the secular colonial imperative or paradigm. You just have those not be taught. And if those things are not being taught the Muslims, then after a generation or two generations, Muslims will forget it. And then we have our situation today where if someone like you or someone like me talks about the Sharia or talks about how this absolute idea of religious freedom and secularism and feminism doesn't exist within Islam, then you have Muslims attacking us. Muslims are criticizing us, even though we're teaching something that is what the ulama have always been teaching. It's only in this small sliver of modern history and the influence of colonialism that we've forgotten these important concepts. So, and then today, like, give you more specific examples, organizations like the Soros Foundation, the Ford Foundation, these are major multi-billion-dollar organizations, and they have the explicit agenda of making Muslims more tolerant of LGBT, making Muslims accept this as being permissible in Islam, and they funnel this money to the Muslim world. Or this idea that the family should be led by the woman, by the mother or the wife. This is something that's very important part of their liberalizing agenda, and this is something that contradicts Islam. In Islam, we know that the man is the husband is the Amir of the family. He's the one who is leading, and that doesn't mean that women and the wife don't have an important role and aren't a partner, but ultimately it's the husband who is the leader. They're trying to undermine that. They're trying to say that no, women, if a woman is dedicated to her family and is just, don't involve with domestic affairs, then she's being oppressed. Women need to be going out and working. They need to be making money. This is the only way that they can get their rights, their gender rights. And so it's clear to see what the motive is for them doing that, because you have all of these overseas businesses, American businesses, that need labor. They need cheap labor from the developing world. And so they have to encourage women to go into these factories, to go into these sweatshops, and to fill the labor force. And so they have an economic motive to counteract and to reform Islam in terms of gender rights.
Do you think these organizations have really thought into it that far?
Yeah. They're explicit. They're explicit about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm surprised, man. I mean, I don't really look much. I don't look into modernism too much. But hearing this from you, it is quite surprising.
Yeah. Well, the most popular thing that people are aware of is the Rand report, Rand being the think tank, and they had back in 2004 they've had multiple reports, but one of them specifically outlining how the West and Western governments can manipulate the Muslim mind in this the global war on terror or extremism or whatever they branded it. So yeah, they put it in black and white. It's not like a secret. But Muslims are not often aware of some of these backdoor dealings. But yeah, billion-dollar operations. So if I had like that kind of funding,
we started off this question with $1 million. I think we need to up the budget a bit.
Yeah, we need to up. Yeah, exactly. But like you said, I think the barakah aspect is very important, mashallah, and even Muslims can do with $1 million what kuffar can try to do in $20 billion, I think. Bi-idhnillah. That's a very good point.
Okay, so in regards,
go ahead.
Because me dealing with what I see in this part of the world, we hear about Iran pumping in that money and producing major refutations against the Ahl Sunnah and whatnot, and I ask, where are these major refutations? Where are these major works? And all that I've heard of when it comes to actual physical copies of books, I mean, not much other than a Tijani's work comes to mind that seems to have had major Iranian support. I mean, that's the thing that usually comes up. And I mean, it's a piece of garbage. And And I think most Sunnis are aware of this now, that it is a piece of garbage. And I've read through it with some students, and we thought it was absolutely absurd, especially that a book like this would be so popular. So yeah, like that was always my reaction to governments pumping money into academic works. Usually, the fruits of that aren't really too great. I don't know. That's from what I've seen. That's from my experience.
Yeah, well, when there's no guidance, then
Right.
there's
I guess so.
not going to
I
be.
guess so.
But if you have, the sincere, it's possible to have a sincere ruler, and we have had that throughout our history. And look at what the Sahaba were able to do with so little,
Right.
and how they were able to spread Islam.
Right.
But yeah, I think that in the right hands, someone sincere, who with wisdom can be a leader of a nation, of the Ummah, and can put that good money to use and put the, Bayt al-Mal to good use in da'wah and, spreading Islam. So, and then having like an intellectual response. I think like we are trying to do these refutations on a individual, amateur has a negative connotation, but it's amateur in the technical sense. Like we're not we're not on salary, and there's not this big budget behind us. But in the ideal world, like you have Muslim civilization is able to produce these kinds of intellectual works and media and refutations to counteract all of this, all these books and movies and videos, content that the West has produced, pushing secularism, pushing liberalism, pushing their particular culture. And unfortunately, what we see in a lot of the Muslim world in the modern time is this intoxication with the West and seeing the West as their ideas being superior and trying to Islamicize it. So that's why you have, when communism was ascendant in the 20th century, you have Muslims writing about, Islamic communism and how Islam is a communist religion, and they're not thinking, these authors are not thinking on a independent, grounded basis to be able to express Islam as superior, Islam providing these solutions without trying to mix in, some Western ideas or some Western philosophies.
Right.
So
SubhanAllah.
Yeah. One question that's a little bit heavier, because we did title this video about how to have fun with atheists, right? So one person asks, his name is Bernard, so what is the best argument you bring to a person without belief in God to get them interested in Islam in a positive way?
About the title of this video, this is not my field, man. I don't even know what I'm doing here, to be honest. Alhamdulillah, I'm someone who has a decent background in hadith sciences, a decent background in Islamic history. I don't do anything with atheists. I don't, that's your field.
Isn't apostate prophet is an atheist?
He is, but I'm on the
You've done
defensive,
43 videos.
I'm on the defensive. I mean, that's if someone was like, hey, Farid, yalla, go attack questions that have to do with morality and whatnot, or use the kalam cosmological argument. Like, hey man, that's not my field. That's just not me. That's not stuff that I know anything about. I'm just the guy who says, hey, you said this about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, these are the chains of the reports. This narrator actually is weak. That's what I do. So even though, that's the strangest thing. That's the strangest thing about this. I'm in this position refuting an atheist, even though in reality this isn't my field. And I was with a bunch of brothers recently in this group. It was a Quran discussion group, basically, Quranic studies discussion group, and we're discussing that guy, Ishmael, from Don't Convert to Islam. He put out a video about qira'at. And we're discussing what we're supposed to do with this video. And the guys were like, Yalla, Farid, do a refutation. And I was like, Ya Shabab, this is not my field. I'm not the guy who knows much about Quranic studies. But since then, I've been getting into it. But like at the time, that's the issue. It's that the people who are supposed to be doing what they are supposed to be doing in the field aren't doing it. And I was speaking to Brother Mansour from Speaker's Corner. I'm sure you're familiar with Mansour and his videos. I asked him, Akhi, this was a few weeks ago. I was like, Mansour, don't you sometimes feel upset, annoyed at the ulama, at the students of knowledge that aren't stepping up, and that, you know, people like us are stepping up? Does that frustrate you? And he said, Akhi Farid, I've been waiting for them since the 90s, and then they just haven't stepped up. And that's why I sometimes feel compelled to do things that I'm not supposed to be doing. I feel compelled to get into fields I'm not supposed to be getting into. People are telling me to refute Christianity. I don't know jack about Christianity, but that's just our situation, and more people need to step up. And again, I'm in a video conversation where we're doing this, and the title is Fun with Atheists. I'm like, I don't know jack about atheism. I don't know. Akhi, you're talking about the history of atheism. I was like, Ajib. Everything I'm learning, everything I see is new to me, you know?
Oh, well, give yourself a little bit more credit, mashallah.
Well, I'm just on the defensive. And that's what I hate. I hate doing that. I hate being on the defensive. But that's just the only thing I can do.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I think you're being modest, mashallah, and so. But I mean, just I want to address this real quick. I guess I can say something about it.
Please, that question is yours, man. Go for it.
But just one comment on ulama. Like, I think we have to give the ulama a little bit of leeway, just because I think that when you attain the status of being an alim, then there's so many questions and so many issues that you have to deal with in a communal context. At least, I mean, from what I've seen in the West, like anyone who reaches a status of being considered an alim, then they have to answer emails or phone messages at midnight. Basically, kids who are having problems with drugs.
Right.
Couples getting divorced, and all of these endless issues with the community, and it's very immediate, and so there's not as much time to like for example that I would have, or maybe you have, to just think and work out some of these arguments and put together a refutation or actually do research. I think it is a matter of funding, right? Because if we had institutions that would fund ulama to do this kind of research and to promote that and to package it so that the alim, all he has to focus on is doing the research and producing like a book or a video series or a course, and then everything else is taken care of, I think you would see a lot more ulama doing that. It's just that they don't have the budget. They have to work as an imam. They have to work as a kind of community mediator or counselor. Like, they wear a dozen different hats. I'm sure where you are located, maybe that's a different situation. In the West, this is what we unfortunately see.
I see. Okay. I look back at it historically, and I do find major ulama writing the main refutations. That was in the past. Sure, things may have changed now.
They were supported by the awqaf. They had these funds.
Well, you had some who were completely broke and still did what they did.
That's true as well. That's true as well.
But yeah, okay, طيب ما في مشكلة. Let's give the ulama a free pass. But wallah akhi, the situation is terrible. When I see shabab, young guys, who and you look at the level for ilm, the level for ilm isn't there, and you see them producing refutations to videos that are just not up to par. And you think to yourself, I think to myself, I'm like, what, and caused this young guy to make a video like this, to get into this topic? And then I realize, I mean, duh. I mean, it's the same reason why I'm here at times. When I feel that I don't have the tools for this specific subject or this specific field. It's just that they don't see many people stepping up. They don't see Talabat al-ilm stepping up. They don't see the graduates from this and that university stepping up. And a lot of them, and I was in the khutbah, akhi. I was in the khutbah in Bahrain, and the sheikh, akhi, he went on this rant, not rant, excuse me, but like it was a fiery Friday sermon where he basically condemned the students of knowledge that went to Islamic universities, came back and sat at home instead of coming back and fixing the community and giving durus in their community and relevant to our discussion, refuting shubuhat. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't doing that.
Why do you think that is?
I think because a lot of people think I understand how one can fall into this. One reason is, hey, this is a dumb shubha. I'm not going to refute this. It should be simple. Sometimes they don't feel that these shubhat have a wide scope and they influence a lot of people. Sometimes they think, yallah, there's someone else who's going to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where we get stuck having to pick it up. And, it is, at the end of the day, it's fard kifaya, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always this assumption that there's someone else who's going to pick it up.
Right.
That's the issue. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't know. Like, I think that people who are studying, I think maybe it is the issue of funding, because they're worried about, if I speak on this issue according to what the tradition has taught, it's politically incorrect and I'm going to get hammered. I'm not going to be able to get that imam's position. I'm going to get in trouble with the board of the masjid. I think these are really valid concerns, and it's because of economic scarcity in terms of having a salary, being secure in your job. It's right. It's very rare that a masjid, for example, or any like Muslim community that has money will give a blank check to that student of knowledge or that imam and say, look, what you are the alim, or you are the advanced student of knowledge, or whatever the case may be, you've graduated, you have these credentials, you have these ijazat. Whatever you say, we're gonna follow. We're gonna hear and we're gonna obey. You teach Islam. You teach us Islam, and we're not going to, draw red lines for you or say that you can't speak on this issue. You can't speak on this issue. I had a friend who is about to finish his studies at the University of Medina. And he told me that he was visiting different masajid in the U.S. And basically he was trying out to be the imam. And they were kind of interviewing him and testing him out. Like, okay, give the khutbah. And we want to see how you interact with the community, what you can bring to the community. Which is fine. It's like a job application process. But at certain masajid, they were telling him that you don't talk about hijab. Don't talk about anything having to do with XYZ. And they're giving him these requirements. It's like, I'm not interested in giving a khutbah if you're going to tell me what to talk about. If I decide that hijab is the most important thing that needs to be addressed because of the state of the community, then I'm going to address it. I'm the one who studied, not you, right? So it's very rare to find a masjid that has that kind of attitude with the ulama and the students of knowledge. And so I think we have to put blame like where it's due. And I'm not saying that some of these students of knowledge are confused, and maybe they do have, this could be another aspect, like they don't necessarily even see certain issues need to be refuted. I mean, I get this pushback all the time, like, Daniel, why are you talking about feminism? Well, I've studied feminism. I've seen the history of feminism. I've seen how feminism has been used by the colonialists, by the colonizer, to subjugate Muslims. past and present. And so I've studied, so I'm acutely aware of the danger that feminism brings with it. If you haven't studied that, then you'll think that, well, Daniel is an extremist, or he's this quote-unquote alt-right men's rights activist or whatever else. So, right. But a student of knowledge is not able to study everything, right? So that's the issue.
I think that from what you've said, definitely your world is really different than mine. I don't recall facing a lot of these issues here. I can understand feminism being an issue here. I mean, it hasn't, of course, it's not as bad as this in the States, but I mean, like we can see it. We can get a sense of it around. And to be honest, a lot of the times it's just, hey, women are a lot louder than they used to be. And that's all it is. But wallahu a'lam, I mean, I can understand from reading some of your content that it is a much bigger issue in the States.
Just to get on the question that the Mr. Bernard asked.
Yeah.
All
yours, bro.
Yeah, I think that the best argument, and the argument that really affects me, it's called the argument from design. But basically, this is something that Allah is, the Quran addresses over and over again, to see the ayat of Allah, to see, if we look at creation, if we look at the world around us, and we even look at ourselves as human beings, we look at our bodies, we look at our mind, we look at all of how amazing the creation is in its intricacy, and we when we see these things, it brings these sentiments like, this is not just random goo that has self-assembled itself into everything that we see around us. And this is a very intuitive, fitri argument, I think. It really appeals to our fitra, our deepest intuitions about the world, and we can recognize like what's the most advanced technology that human beings have today, like maybe some kind of particle collider, or the International Space Station, or I studied physics, so I studied and I've even worked at NASA in my youth, and
sure.
So that's pretty much the most advanced technology that humans have, but those pale in comparison. Like, there's no comparison, the intricacy of the International Space Station versus a cell, like an individual cell of the human body. And so the naturalistic argument that a cell or an entire organism can generate by itself through these random processes, this is what's claimed, but does the claim actually pan out when you investigate it? And the answer is no. Like, this naturalistic explanation. Can evolution explain the human body? Can evolution explain how intricate organisms are? Can cosmology explain how the universe is the way it is, with how different forces of nature, the gravitational force, electromagnetic, the strong and the weak nuclear forces, how are they in perfect balance and harmony to create the universe that we live in? Does cosmology explain that? No. There's no answer to this fine-tuning argument of the universe. And the only way that someone like Stephen Hawking explained it is by proposing a multiverse. Right. Is there any physical evidence, naturalistic, empirical evidence for the multiverse? Nope. It's just speculation. Okay, so that's not really available to a naturalist to have like this multiverse explanation. And then does evolution explain the complexity of the cell or any kind of basic unicellular, single cellular organism? The answer is also no. And there's a recent, not controversy, but a lot of news about a specific Yale professor, David Galertner, who he's an atheist, but he says that, look, I've looked into the math of natural selection and Darwinism, and it just doesn't add up. There's no way that this can explain how life could have originated and how life could evolve. And so he did a series of, he did an article and then he did a viral video where he's explaining, like, I don't see how natural selection is a good explanation of the design of the universe. And then you have other atheists like Thomas Nagel. He wrote a book, Mind and Cosmos, and he says, I'm an atheist, but this naturalistic explanation is fundamentally flawed. This naturalistic explanation of how the universe is, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up. And so he wrote a book, Mind and Cosmos, and then the atheist community basically did takfir of him because he's admitting that naturalism, materialism, empiricism has fundamental flaws. It's not like, oh, in a few years we'll discover the answer and we'll figure out why there's something called a human consciousness, why there's something called the universe as it is. No, there's something more fundamental that science misses, and he writes about that in his book. So this, I think, this kind of line of argumentation, I think, is the best way to talk to someone who wants reasons for why God exists. Okay, so let's get back to. So one of the things that you mentioned right now is that you don't see much of the same thing where you are compared to American Muslims. Do you think that the issues that American Muslims are dealing with will spread to the Muslim world? Do you think there's a danger of that? Are you seeing any of that?
Well, naturally. I mean, I recall even 10 years ago when I was in the UAE, I recall that there was a greater acceptance for homosexuality, for example. And I'm sure that had to do with media. I'm sure of that. And I'm sure that now the hot topic in the West is the rights of not just LGBT, but the T especially. I mean, that's a really big topic, and I'm sure that it's going to become more accepted even in the Middle East. But yani, alhamdulillah, in general, people here are a lot more conservative than they are in the West, naturally, because of the deen. And even people who aren't practicing, at all, they will be quite conservative, at least in comparison to people in the West. But I do know people who are really conservative, even though they're not really practicing.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe in the future, but alhamdulillah, the conservatism here is quite strong. So it's not going to be as big of an issue anytime soon, inshallah.
Well, what about some of the reforms happening in certain countries?
Well, even you do find some liberal people being annoyed at that.
Why liberal people?
Because it's sometimes these changes are too big, and sometimes it's too unnatural, and sometimes people feel, even though they're liberal, they do feel that these issues are just happening too fast, and perhaps we're losing our culture, stuff like that.
So even more liberal people are opposed to. So then, is it clear, like there's a sense that some of these liberalization, like, okay, now you're having rock concerts and you're having like all these, no more like restrictions on how people can dress. People sense that this is coming from outside. It's like unnatural being imposed, or what?
I don't know if it's that. I just do hear liberal people being upset at the changes and the openness. I don't even like to use the word. I don't like to use words like open and free. That's what we use here. When things tend to get liberal, people say, things are more free. I just like the usage of that word. But yeah, even liberal people here sometimes are upset with the new steps of freedom, if you'd like, if you get me.
Right.
I have seen that. I mean, I have seen that. And of course, there are some people who are really happy about what's going on, and usually those people will be, I mean, at the edge of the deen, you know. I don't know. Yeah, very, very secular, and I try to differentiate between people who are like completely secular and Muslims who are liberal leaning, even in this region.
What's the difference?
يعني usually some people who are referred to as liberal sometimes are just people who push towards lenient opinions in fiqh, for example. Not necessarily anti-Islam or anything like that, but just lean towards the tahleel of most things, you know?
Right. Okay. And then as opposed to secular, someone who is driving for...
completely... I don't know if I want to use the word anti-religion, but yeah, I guess that is a way of describing it.
Okay. All right, so let's ask the viewers if you have any questions for Brother Farid, put them in the chat now so I can see them, and then we'll ask him your questions, inshallah. But while we're waiting for people to comment with their questions, one question that I had also is that now you're getting done with this apostate prophet nonsense. What's your next project? Do you have anything in mind that you're already like thinking about?
Wallah, at the moment, I just want to take a break, man. It's been a tough month and a half, and some folks have mentioned some channels that they'd like to see taken down. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, I don't know about that. I mean, this wasn't easy. Crunching out a video every single day, it's a lot of work. But I'll definitely know in a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'll have an idea of what I want to do. But for now, inshallah, in the week, I want to take a vacation.
Okay, mashallah. So one question here from someone is, so do you have any online resources that you recommend for Muslims who are interested in, following your footsteps and, studying? Is there anything online that they can do? What do you recommend for someone who is trying to pursue knowledge and basically get stronger in being able to refute these kinds of arguments? Like, what are your recommendations on that?
Well, as always, the first thing I always recommend is learning Arabic and getting better at Arabic, and it's never too late to learn. I started learning grammar when I was 27, really late, and even though all Arabs are taught grammar in school, it just doesn't stick, and we never care about it, we never pay attention. And it just all evaporates by the time we're out of school, and we don't learn the classical texts. We learn whatever's in the school curriculums, which is usually just not good enough. So Arabic number one, and then I strongly recommend everyone to get into hadith sciences. That will save you so much time. You don't have to reconcile strange reports with your ideology. You don't have to try to look deep into these strange meanings. You don't have to look into the strange of ulama. If the hadith itself is a fabrication, and what is if you've studied hadith sciences, it truly saves you a lot of time. So those are two priorities I would suggest anyone who's interested in getting into refutations to look up and to get into.
What do you recommend is the best way to study Arabic for English?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, alhamdulillah, I am an Arab, and I mean, Yeah, so I never struggled with that. I never really struggled with that.
Okay.
Reading helped.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So another question that someone's asking is, what was one issue that you wanted to refute, some attack against Islam that was really difficult or that required the most time for you to refute or research?
Um, to be honest, I'm new in the field, Akhi. I'm new in the field, so I think some of the strongest arguments against Islam are things that aren't even out there. Things that I look into myself and I say, I don't recall the ulama discussing this, and having to look deep and deep and deep inside to find answers to questions that I've had. Um, but yeah, in regards to shubuhat that I've seen online, most of the time, so much. I mean, there is quite a lot of work that has been done in order to refute general ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one topic that I did struggle with though recently was the topic of slavery and Islam and reconciling that, and um, it left me scratching my head for a while. And I did find a lot of convincing answers through Abdul al-Andalusi, who's got a beautiful video on the subject. He goes on for about an hour and 40 minutes, like 40 minutes of Q&A. It was the whole thing, the actual lecture is like for an hour. And it's quite a beautiful lecture. I would recommend everyone who's interested in that topic to check it out. And that's solved a lot of the strange aspects for me, alhamdulillah.
Okay, mashallah. There are some questions about apostasy law. I know you did a refutation, or you did a response recently on apostasy. I don't know if you want to speak more on that.
Well, Muhammad Hijab handled it quite well. I think I haven't seen anyone handle it as well as he did, and I would recommend
What did he
folks that are
say?
interested. Oh, he said that that's apostasy law is justifiable under the limits of or under the rules of secular liberalism. He quotes John Locke, and he quotes some other forefathers of liberalism. It's quite interesting video.
Okay.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I've talked to Mortaddin apostates about this issue, where they asked me, should we be killed because of our, leaving Islam? So I tell them straight up, like, well, this is what the Sharia calls for, and it's justified, and it's not really hard to explain. I don't think we need to appeal to John Locke or some of these liberal thinkers, because the average liberal today or secularist doesn't like take the word of John Locke as the gospel.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And appealing to treason is another avenue that I've seen people argue it, like, oh, well, the apostate is committing treason against the state, essentially. But that's easy to deny. Like, people can say, well, today's governments are not based on religion, or religion is not a crucial part of a person's national identity, so this apostasy law, is then irrelevant for all of these Muslim countries. And so then the person who is appealing to treason is kind of trapped, and you can't really respond to that. But yeah, the way that I explain it is just in terms of what the Sharia does is create a state and a society that is that entire rules of law, morality, connections between people, your relationships, your obligations and duties and expectations and working and dealing with other people, all of that is guaranteed by belief in Allah, belief in that Allah will hold you accountable And so this is really the groundwork of having a moral society, a just society, is that people know that Allah will hold you accountable, and that we're Muslims, and so there are norms that we abide by. And so if you take that away, if you take that belief away and you start attacking that, then you're really attacking all of society. You're attacking the fabric of what holds that society together. And so it's very dangerous to the stability and the well-being of Muslims in that society if you start questioning or denying that God exists, and you start blaspheming God, you start blaspheming the Prophet ﷺ, you start denying the Quran. And so that is very dangerous, and there needs to be strong deterrent against that kind of speech and those kinds of actions. So this idea of universal free speech, this is not something that is actually recognized in any society, and there are authors, secular authors and Christian authors who write about this, that there's no such thing as free speech, and it's a good thing too, because speech can be very dangerous. It can be very subversive. And in fact, they're in the going back to colonialism, you had colonizers who would restrict speech within the Muslim places that they colonized, because they're afraid that, okay, if preachers, ulama, start talking about the issue of jihad, or they start teaching about the issue of Islam being the exclusive truth, or they even start using the word kafir or kuffar, right? Now the term that is being used is غير Muslim, right? غير Muslimin, instead of kafir, right? Why this change?
That's in the West, I'm guessing.
Well, it's also in the East, unfortunately. And we see a lot of some of these scholars in the East also using this kind of terminology. Why? This is a restriction on speech because the colonizer was afraid that this is going to lead to kicking out the colonizer and disrupting our plans within these colonies. These Muslims are going to rise up and rebel against our colonial rule of them, and so they restricted speech because of this concern for stability. Well, Muslims are also the Sharia is also concerned with the health and the state of society, and so there has to be restrictions that protect these very important Grundnorms or these foundational issues that are so important to the health and the fabric and the order and the stability of society. And so there has to be strong deterrent against that, and that's why there's the had for it. And I mean, there's details, right? So it's not vigilante, it's very procedural,
right,
and there's
right.
opportunity to make tawbah or to take back, to become
right,
Muslim
right.
again. So these are kinds of details that are important to study, but the basic idea, I think what makes sense to me in understanding this had for apostates is this kind of argument. It's like a maslaha argument, but I think it's the kind of argument that has been made traditionally. Okay. Any other thoughts? Let me check one last time for any questions.
Not on this topic, no. I haven't really looked into it too much.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's something where the harm that's caused, by someone apostatizing and then driving others to consider leaving Islam is so great. It's the harm. I mentioned only the harm in terms of dunya, but the harm in terms of akhirah is so much greater. Okay, you're threatening your akhirah and those around you, and even if it's just your immediate family, you're threatening their dunya and their akhirah, and so there needs to be a strong deterrent against that. So you can make that argument without referring to John Locke or any of these other people.
You should check out the video. I think you'll find it interesting. Either way.
Okay, inshallah. Okay, last chance for any questions. Well, one question: does Farid think we need more full-time da'is that the ummah needs to fund or needs to support?
لا أخي, I don't think so. And as I said earlier, I do believe that there is more barakah in people just doing it because they feel passionate about it. And I think that if I was receiving money to do this, I don't think I'd be passionate about it. I think I'd be, hey, it's my job. All right, let's refute this guy, whatever. But because I'm doing it because I'm passionate, it's different. I'm sure you feel the same way, Akhi.
Right. Well, no, I think that.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the passion. I'm talking about the passion.
Oh, okay, yeah, the passion. Yeah, because the way I think about it is that you have another job that's not related to Islam.
Yeah.
So
this isn't a job, Akhi. This thing isn't a job.
Yeah, but imagine if you had more time to do it. Imagine if you, instead of like 2 hours or 5 hours a day, you had 10 hours a day.
Right.
You'd be able to do it.
I think it would burn me out if I put 10 hours a day into it.
Okay, we'll make sure that no one ever pays you for any. Do not donate anything to Farid. Okay, everyone watching. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, well, barakallahu feek. Really appreciate your time, and I think all our viewers enjoyed your insights, mashallah. And I recommend everyone to subscribe to Brother Farid's YouTube channel. And can you tell us all of your details, like where they can find you?
Well, on YouTube it's Farid Responds. I guess we could put the Twitter handle in the description of the video if you'd like.
Yeah,
it's FARD. It's FARD underscore 0 and then a V.
Yeah. Okay, so inshallah we'll include all of those details in the description of the video, inshallah. And like I said, I think it's important for Muslims to be aware of how Islam is being attacked, because even if you don't have these kinds of doubts yourself personally, these shubuhat, you never know. A family member might, your children might, and so that resource is there for you. So take advantage of that, and Brother Farid's work, mashallah. May Allah bless him and give him the life and the strength and the knowledge to be able to continue this important work, inshallah. And thank you all viewers for tuning in today. As always, I'm your brother Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we'll see you very soon with the next installment of Muslim Skeptic Live. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.